How's it going, everybody? This is Tyler Drabo. Hope you're having another great day, and welcome back to another video. Alright, so I have not done a video for this series in months, but I'm bringing it back today. It is another edition of Bad Game Reviews. In this series, I talk about all the games that I have in my PlayStation collection through PlayStations 1, 2, 3, and 4 that I find would be insanely bad. And unfortunately, the game that will be reviewed for this video today is Mission Impossible. Good spy games are really hard to find nowadays, especially in the modern era of video gaming. However, back in the early days of the PlayStation and all of the other video game consoles that Nintendo and Xbox were releasing, these games were extremely popular, especially with the 007 games, which I really love. So, as Mission Impossible was just starting to get into the film scene after having a TV series back in the 1960s, you would think that they would be able to put up a pretty good adaptation of a video game version of the 1996 film that they released. Unfortunately, they did not do that here. So this game was released by Infograms. Now, it was originally released for the Nintendo 64 back in 1998. That was the original console that this game was meant to be released. However, Infograms decided that they wanted to make a PlayStation port for this as well, so they were able to make a port for the PlayStation 1, which was released a year later in November of 1999. So the story is almost similar to the actual film itself. However, it's not a direct adaptation from the film into the video game. Still, you play as Ethan Hunt, and you're told by your boss Jim Phelps that there is a mole potentially within the organization that you work for. So, as a top secret agent, you travel across multiple countries in the continent of Europe and also a few other places to try to find some clues in regards to what's going on, and ultimately try to stop this mole from causing potential chaos within the organization and also bring destruction to the world as well. There's a lot going on in this game. I mean, there are a few missions where you're basically just doing some fact finding as well, and sometimes there are also missions where it's just straight up combat and action as well. So there's a lot going on in between, and really it can keep you on your toes for a little while, but ultimately Mission Impossible, if they want to really step it up and try to be the equivalent of 007 in video gaming, this was their first shot to do that early on. But they were not able to do that. This game actually went through a pretty hectic development cycle and was delayed multiple times before it was finally released for the Nintendo 64 back in 1998, and then eventually the port for the PlayStation 1 in 1999. And unfortunately, even all of those delays could not save this game from its potential flaws, and the first of them is the actual gameplay itself. And really the main thing in regards to the gameplay here is the inconsistency of it. Now, as I said before, the levels, there were some of them that can be pretty entertaining, but however, there are also other levels as well that could be really just straight up boring and really not up to the level that most of the other missions that you would usually see in a 007 video game at the time were. And the reason I say that is because, as I said before, a lot of the levels, they're basically just fact finding. Obviously you're just uncovering clues in regards to the mole within your agency and really just trying to find some ways to see exactly what this guy is up to before things get any worse. And most of the other time, it's usually one-on-one combat, or sometimes, just straight up destruction in most levels. Usually stuff like that would work very well with other games, and I really felt like that Mission Impossible would have been able to do the same exact thing if they had been able to do it the same way that EA did it with their 007 games. Unfortunately, the levels here are just really inconsistent as a result of that, and because of it, I just felt like that it really doesn't bring the excitement for the majority of the levels compared to some of the other levels in this game. I mean, you gotta respect them for their attempt. It's good to have at least a couple missions where, it's really just, go undercover, stuff like that, and then everything else just goes all hectic and chaos and all that stuff, but I don't think they did a good job at that here, and I'm just being respectful to them here because it just doesn't do a very good job of being able to bring excitement to every single one of these levels, just like they would in other spy games. And despite the amount of levels that they have, it really felt like that, with 20 levels in this game, it definitely felt very long for a say, because a lot of the missions were pretty boring. Not only that, it was also pretty hard at times as well, because the plot in itself, it can be a little bit hard to understand as well, because it's completely different from the actual film in itself, and I've never seen the 1996 film as far as I remember, but there isn't a whole lot that you can do most of the time. Sometimes you just have to really hide in a corner and hope that you can try to find a way to survive the mission, because a lot of the time you're only given a small amount of lives, and unfortunately it's very easy to get killed sometimes. Even when you're on the easy difficulty, sometimes you have to replay a mission multiple times before you can finally beat the game, at least for starters. So yeah, because of that, I feel like that the levels and the overall gameplay in itself, while I definitely felt like it could have been a little better, it does leave a lot to be desired, and unfortunately the inconsistency surrounding it, along along with some of the poor methods that take place in some of those levels, I think it really has a lot to do with the hectic development cycle that this game underwent, and it really showed in this game. The next thing is the controls, and in this game, it's relatively slow. I mean, like, really slow. I mean, obviously, I'm not talking about slow in regards to like loading times in regards to the Italian job. That was in a previous bad game review I did. I'm talking about slow in regards to being able to actually play the game. You have a whole bunch of weapons in your slate, obviously, that you can use to try to complete your missions. However, the problem is that sometimes, you know, because of, you know, the frame rates and all of that and the way they work, sometimes just getting out a weapon is really, really hard. And, you know, with the cameras being the way it is as well, you know, being behind you most of the time, and then sometimes just being overhead where you're not able to really see a whole lot of stuff going on, it's just really hard to be able to see exactly what's going on and to be able to complete the mission in an efficient manner. Not only that, a lot of the guns in this game as well, it's very hard to control as well, because, you know, even when you're shooting them at the right opportunistic time, unfortunately, because of the slow controls of it, you might not be able to get a shot until several milliseconds later. And that goes back into my first part in regards to the gameplay. Unfortunately, you really have to be lucky sometimes in these missions, and unfortunately, the slow controls in this really makes it that hard for you to be able to be that lucky. And not only that, as I said before, you know, some of those controls as a result, it really makes it hard to be able to complete a mission as well. Sometimes you're just not able to really find enough clues or instructions to that way you can be able to complete a mission. Plus, sometimes whenever you fail an objective, you fail the mission entirely, but you don't really know that. So you really have to restart the level entirely just to be able to complete the level. So because of all the action that's taking place, and also, you know, how hard it is to be able to play this game, it sometimes becomes very, very hard to be able to complete a game without screwing up most of the time. I don't know exactly why the controls are like this, unfortunately, but it's just really a shame, because I felt like that, you know, if it was anything like 007, I definitely felt like it would have been able to match that in regards to, you know, effective gameplay and sort of that. Unfortunately, it's not like that here. The controls are just way too slow for me, and although it's not as bad as the loading times for the Italian job for the PS1, unfortunately, I feel like that it really hinders your ability to be able to complete this game. Now, the graphics is also another problem in this game. Now, in the Nintendo 64 version of this, I heard that the graphics were really awful. Here, it's not that much better. However, there are some improvements into the graphics in regards to the PlayStation 1 port. Obviously, you know, it looks a little bit better in comparison to the Nintendo 64, as I have watched some of the gameplay for it as well for both of those consoles, so the differences are really there. But still, even then, it just doesn't look very good. And unfortunately, it's not really up to par in regards to the 007 games and some of the other spy games that were developed at that time. You know, you get some very weird facial expressions from the characters as well, you know. Some of them look like they're not even moving at all. As a result of that, it's really hard for them to really see exactly, you know, what a reaction could be like. You know, it just looks like that they're stale, unfortunately. And because of, you know, the way that the colors look like, and, you know, just some of the ways that, you know, the frame rates and, you know, just visualization and stuff, and the graphics in itself, it just doesn't look very good. I also didn't like the cutscenes in this game. They don't feel very lively to me. And the reason why I say that is because, you know, especially in the first cutscene where, you know, you're Ethan Hunt and you're just listening in the computer and then you just walk away and then it just explodes. I mean, I really understand the nature of that, but unfortunately, it just doesn't feel very lively because he doesn't look like he's enjoying it. It's just motionless. And unfortunately, that's basically the same way for the rest of the cutscenes in this game as well. It just doesn't feel like that it really brings a whole level of energy and excitement to it. I mean, props to Infograms for doing their best to make the graphics for this one a little better than the Nintendo 64. I mean, I know that there are a lot of complaints in regards to the graphics for that one, but still, it doesn't look any better for the PlayStation 1 version as well. And if you really want to make a game that looks good for the PS1 at that time, they have to be better than what they were in this game. And unfortunately, they weren't. And finally, as I mentioned before, it's just the whole development of this whole entire game. I just feel like that, you know, because of all of the delays that really took place in regards to developing the original version of the game for the Nintendo 64, and then later the port for the PlayStation 1, I really do feel like that it really hindered the possibilities of this game being successful. And unfortunately, it really showed in the final outcome in both of these ports. I mean, you gotta look at it. They probably pushed back the release date for the Nintendo 64 version like, I don't know, 2 or 3 times just so that way they can really try to get everything sorted out with this game. And you can really understand why, because there was still quite a number of issues that really took place with the PS1 port for this and the Nintendo 64 port of it as well that really pushed this game back. And I definitely feel like that because of that, it just made it so much harder to be able to enjoy this game and also play it efficiently. Its flaws really showed in the final product of this game. And I really felt like that the amount of times that it was pushed back, I thought they would use that time a little more efficiently to fix some of those flaws. Now, granted, not all of the game is bad though. I do feel like that there were some good things that came out of this game. For example, the background music. I mean, obviously that theme from Mission Impossible, the original one, that I really enjoyed. Plus some of the background music as well. It definitely feels that it mixes in really well with some of the levels in this game as well. So I definitely have to give the composers that made the music for this game a plus for that. Not only that, the Nintendo 64 version of it did not have any real voice acting. This one, it did. They were able to get some guys to be able to do some voice acting for this game, and so I really do appreciate that. I definitely feel like it gives it a little bit more of a vibe, but still, the voice acting of it as well, it can be rather bad at times as well to hear, and I didn't really like portions of that, especially in the cutscenes too. And of course, you know, the way that you are able to complete your missions sometimes, you know, let's say, you know, like it gives you a huge list of all the objectives that you need to complete to be able to beat the mission. I do like the possibilities that it allows you sometimes, at least in the early portions of the game, to really be able to decide which ones you want to complete first as well. Right? You can complete the easiest ones first, try to get everything first, and maybe sometimes get to the harder ones later on in the mission. It doesn't have to be entirely linear, and so really you get to decide at your own pace to complete your mission the way you want to do it, and I do like that for this one. But those are really where the positives end. I definitely feel like that the development for this game could have been a little bit better, and I feel like that if they had used the extra time that they had to really look at this game wisely to see what was wrong with it, I definitely feel like that this port, along with the Nintendo 64 version of it, could have ended up a whole lot better. Unfortunately, it didn't look like that they were able to fix most of those problems, because unfortunately, Mission Impossible comes out as a pretty bad game for the PS1 as a result. During the late 90s and the early 2000s, spy games were really some of the most popular games that you could play on the PlayStation 1 and the PlayStation 2, and none of those games exemplify that better than the 007 franchise. I am a huge lifelong fan of the 007 video games, especially with the two PS2 games, with Nightfire and Agent Under Fire. I felt like that those two games really best exemplified the spy games for that early period of time. And you know, when Mission Impossible eventually became a film franchise in 1996, when they decided to make an adaptation of the film into a video game, there was a lot of excitement to see whether or not Mission Impossible would be able to live up to the standards and challenge 007 in the video game franchise, just like they were able to do in the film. Unfortunately, it just went through a flawed development cycle, and unfortunately, it really was not able to live up to the standards that it was expected to match. And as a result, the controls were a little bit hard to be able to play with, and it was also very slow at times too. And as a result, the gameplay of it was just not fun, and it just really felt like that it was at times boring, and also at times very, very hard to play as well. And you know, even though the ending of it was a little chaotic, and I felt like that was a good way to go out, especially with the final level just really destroying the entire place in a bang. Unfortunately, most of the other missions to this game, it just doesn't generate the excitement that I really thought it would. But you gotta at least give Infograms some effort for trying to challenge Electronic Arts and their 007 franchise. I definitely felt like during that time they made the best attempt possible, but unfortunately the delays that they had with making this game, it unfortunately really affected the outcome. Mission Impossible unfortunately came out as a flawed game as a result for the Nintendo 64, and unfortunately it wasn't much better for the PlayStation 1, and as a result it ends up as another bad game in my video game collection. So that's going to do it for another bad game review. Mission Impossible is one of the many video games that I have in my video game collections through the PlayStations 1, 2, 3, and 4, and so I really like to hear from you. What other video games would you like for me to review? Whether it's a bad game or maybe even a good game. I still have some thoughts about possibly reviewing some of the more interesting and more unique games in my collection. I still haven't come around in a while. I really would like to start getting into that soon. So what games would you like for me to review next? Feel free to let me know down in the comments below. I'll take a look at them, play them a little bit, and I'll give you my review on them as soon as I possibly can. Anyways, that's going to do it for this video. I hope you all enjoyed it. As always, if you'd like to see more of my content, be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you know when my latest video is released. Comment below for future suggestions for all my videos, whether it's blogs, projects, or challenges, you name it, leave it in the comments below and I'll do my best to make them. As always, follow me on my social media. All the links are in the description below. That's going to do it for this video. I hope you're having another great day. And as always, I hope to see all of you again in another video very soon. And if you're a lover of spy games, I really would give it a little bit of thought before picking this one up. I'm just being honest here. So long, everybody.